When it was the 17th night, she said, "It hath reached me, O auspicious king, that she stood forth before the commander of the faithful, and began to tell the eldest lady's tale. Verily a strange tale is mine, and 'tis this: yon 2 black witches are my eldest sisters by one mother and father, and these 2 others, she who beareth upon her the signs of stripes, and the 3rd our procuratrix, are my sisters by another mother. When my father died, each took her share of the heritage, and after a while my mother also deceased, leaving me and my sisters German 3,000 dinars, so each daughter received her portion of 1,000 dinars, and I the same, but lost the youngest. In due course of time, my sisters married with the usual festivities and lived with their husbands, who bought merchandise with their wives' moneys and set out on their travels together. Thus they threw me off. My brothers-in-law were absent with their wives 5 years, during which period they spent all the money they had, and becoming bankrupt, deserted my sisters in foreign parts amid stranger folk. After 5 years, my eldest sister returned to me in beggar's gear with her clothes in rags and tatters and a dirty old mantilla, and truly she was in the foulest and sorriest plight. At first sight I did not know my own sister, but presently I recognized her and said, "What state is this?" "Oh, our sister," she replied, "words cannot undo the done, and the reed of destiny hath run through what Allah decreed." Then I sent her to the bath and dressed her in a suit of mine own, and boiled for her bouillon and brought her some good wine, and said to her, "O my sister, thou art the eldest, who still standest to us in the stead of father and mother. And for the inheritance which came to me as to you twain, Allah hath blessed it and prospered it to me with increase, and my circumstances are easy, for I have made much money by spinning and cleaning silk, and I and you will share my wealth alike." I entreated her with all kindliness, and she abode with me a whole year, during which our thoughts and fancies were always full of our other sister. Shortly after she too came home in yet fouler and sorrier plight than that of my eldest sister, and I dealt by her still more honourably than I had done by the first, and each of them had a share of my substance. After a time they said to me, "O our sister, we desire to marry again, for indeed we have not patience to drag on our days without husbands, and to lead the lives of widows bewitched." And I replied, "O eyes of me, ye have hitherto seen scanty weal in wedlock, for nowadays good men and true are become rarities and curiosities, nor do I deem your projects advisable, as ye have already made trial of matrimony and have failed." But they would not accept my advice, and married without my consent. Nevertheless, I gave them outfit and dowries out of my money, and they fared forth with their mates. In a mighty little time their husbands played them false, and, taking whatever they could lay hands upon, levanted and left them in the lurch. Thereupon they came to me ashamed and in abject case, and made their excuses to me, saying, "Pardon our fault, and be not wroth with us, for although thou art younger in years, yet art thou older in wit. Henceforth we will never make mention of marriage. So take us back as thy handmaidens, that we may eat our mouthful." Quoth I, "Welcome to you, O my sisters, there is naught dearer to me than you." And I took them in, and redoubled my kindness to them. We ceased not to live after this loving fashion for a full year, when I resolved to sell my wares abroad, and first to fit me a conveyance for Bassora, so I equipped a large ship, and loaded her with merchandise and valuable goods for traffic, and with provant and all needful for a voyage, and said to my sisters, "Will ye abide at home whilst I travel, or would ye prefer to accompany me on the voyage?" "We will travel with thee," answered they, "for we cannot bear to be parted from thee." So I divided my monies into 2 parts, one to accompany me and the other to be left in charge of a trusty person, for as I said to myself, haply some accident may happen to the ship, and yet we remain alive, in which case we shall find on our return what may stand us in good stead. I took my 2 sisters, and we went a-voyaging some days and nights, but the master was careless enough to miss his course, and the ship went astray with us, and entered a sea other than the sea we sought. For a time we knew naught of this, and the wind blew fair for us 10 days, after which the lookout man went aloft to see about him, and cried, "Good news?" Then he came down rejoicing, and said, "I have seen what seemeth to be a city as 'twere a pigeon." Hereat we rejoiced, and ere an hour of the day had passed, the buildings showed plain in the offing, and we asked the captain, "What is the name of yonder city?" And he answered, "By Allah, I wot not, for I never saw it before, and never sailed these seas in my life, but since our troubles have ended in safety, Remains for you only to land there with your merchandise, and if you find selling profitable, sell and make your market of what is there, and if not, we will rest here 2 days and provision ourselves and fare away. So we entered the port, and the captain went uptown and was absent a while, after which he returned to us and said, Arise, go up into the city and marvel at the works of Allah with his creatures and pray to be preserved from his righteous wrath. So we landed, and going up into the city, saw at the gate men hending staves in hand. But when we drew near them, behold, they had been translated by the anger of Allah, and had become stones. Then we entered the city, and found all who therein woned into black stones and stoned. Not an inhabited house appeared to the aspire, nor was there a blower of fire. We were awestruck at the sight, and threaded the market streets, where we found the goods and gold and silver left lying in their places. And we were glad and said, Doubtless there is some mystery in all this. Then we dispersed about the thoroughfares, and each busied himself with collecting the wealth and money and rich stuffs, taking scanty heed of friend or comrade. As for myself, I went up to the castle, which was strongly fortified, and entering the king's palace by its gate of red gold, found all the vessel of gold and silver, and the king himself seated in the midst of his chamberlains and nabobs and emirs and wazirs, all clad in raiment which confounded man's art. I drew nearer, and saw him sitting on a throne, encrusted and inlaid with pearls and gems, and his robes were of gold cloth, adorned with jewels of every kind, each one flashing like a star. Around him stood 50 Mamelukes, white slaves, clothed in silks of divers sorts, holding their drawn swords in their hands. But when I drew near to them, lo, all were black stones. My understanding was confounded at the sight, but I walked on and entered the great hall of the harem, whose walls I found hung with tapestries of gold-striped silk, and spread with silken carpets embroidered with golden cowers. Here I saw the queen lying at full length arrayed in robes purfled with fresh young pearls. On her head was a diadem set with many sorts of gems, each fit for a yorn, and around her neck hung collars and necklaces. All her raiment and her ornaments were in natural state, but she had been turned into a black stone by Allah's wrath. Presently I espied an open door, for which I made straight, and found leading to it a flight of 7 steps. So I walked up, and came upon a place pargeted with marble, and spread and hung with gold-work carpets and tapestry, in middlemost of which stood a throne of juniper wood, inlaid with pearls and precious stones, and set with bosses of emeralds. In the further wall was an alcove, whose curtains, bestrung with pearls, were let down, and I saw a light issuing therefrom. So I drew near, and perceived that the light came from a precious stone as big as an ostrich egg, set at the upper end of the alcove upon a little crazy elephantine couch of ivory and gold. And this jewel, blazing like the sun, cast its rays wide inside. The couch also was spread with all manner of silken stuffs, amazing the gazer with their richness and beauty. I marveled much at all this, especially when seeing in that place candles ready lighted, and I said in my mind, Needs must someone have lighted these candles. Then I went forth and came to the kitchen, and thence to the buttery, and the king's treasure chambers, and continued to explore the palace, and to pace from place to place. I forgot myself in my awe and marvel at these matters, and I was drowned in thought, till the night came on. Then I would have gone forth, but knowing not the gate I lost my way, so I returned to the alcove whither the lighted candles directed me, and sat down upon the couch, and wrapping myself in a coverlet, after I had repeated somewhat from the Koran, I would have slept, but could not, for restlessness possessed me. When night was at its noon, I heard a voice chanting the Koran in sweetest accents, but this tone thereof was weak. So I rose, glad to hear the silence broken, and followed the sound until I reached a closet whose door stood ajar. Then peeping through a chink, I considered the place, and lo, it was an oratory, wherein was a prayer niche with 2 wax candles burning, and lamps hanging from the ceiling. In it too was spread a prayer carpet, whereupon sat a youth fair to see, and before him on its stand was a copy of the Koran, from which he was reading. I marveled to see him alone alive amongst the people of the city, and entering saluted him, whereupon he raised his eyes and returned my salam. Quoth I, Now by the truth of what thou readest in Allah's holy book, I conjure thee to answer my question. He looked upon me with a smile, and said, O handmaid of Allah, first tell me the cause of thy coming hither, and I in turn will tell what hath befallen both me and the people of this city, and what was the reason of my escaping their doom. So I told him my story whereat he wondered, and I questioned him of the people of the city, when he replied, Have patience with me for a while, O my sister. And reverently closing the holy book, he laid it up in a satin bag. Then he seated me by his side, and I looked at him, and behold, he was as the moon at its full, fair of face and rare of form, soft-sided and slight, of well-proportioned height, and cheeks smoothly bright and diffusing light, in brief, a sweet, a sugar-stick, even as saith the poet to the like of him in these couplets. That night the astrologer a scheme of planets drew, and lo, a graceful shape of youth appeared in view. Saturn had stained his locks with Saturnine jet, and spots of nut-brown musk on rosy side-face blue. Mars tinctured either cheek with tinct of martial red. Sagittal shots from eyelids Sagittarius threw. Dowered him Mercury with bright mercurial wit, bore off the bear what all men's evil glances grew, and mazed stood Astrophil to sight the marvel birth, when lauded low the moon at full to bust the earth. And of a truth Allah the Most High had robed him in the raiment of perfect grace, and had purfled and fringed it with a cheek all beauty and loveliness, even as the poet saith of such an one, by his eyelids shedding perfume, and his fine slim waist I swear, by the shooting of his shafts barbed with sorcery passing rare, by the softness of his sighs, and glances lingering light, and brow of dazzling daytide ray, and night within his hair, by his eyebrows which denied to who look upon them rest, now bidding, now forbidding, ever dealing joy and care, by the rose that decks his cheek, and the myrtle of its moss, by jacinths bedded in his lips, and pearl his smile lays bare, by his graceful bending neck, and the curving of his breast, whose polished surface beareth those granados, lovely pair, by his heavy hips that quiver as he passeth in his pride, or he resteth with that waist which is slim beyond compare, by the satin of his skin, by that fine unsullied sprite, by the beauty that containeth all things bright and debonair, by that ever-open hand, by the candour of his tongue, by noble blood and high degree whereof he's hope and air, musk from him borrows muskiness she loveth to exhale, and all the airs of ambergris through him perfume the air. The sun, methinks, the broad bright sun, before my love would pale, and sans his splendour would appear a paring of his nail. I glanced at him with one glance of eyes, which caused me 1,000 sighs, and my heart was at once taken captive wise. So I asked him, O my lord and my love, tell me that whereof I questioned thee. And he answered, Hearing is obeying. Know, O handmaid of Allah, that this city was the capital of my father, who is the king thou sawest on the throne, transfigured by Allah's wrath to a black stone, and the queen thou foundest in the alcove is my mother. They and all the people of the city were Magians, who fire adored in lieu of the omnipotent Lord, and were wont to swear by low and heat and shade and light, and the spheres revolving day and night. My father had ne'er a son till he was blessed with me near the last of his days, and he reared me till I grew up, and prosperity anticipated me in all things. Now it so fortuned that there was with us an old woman, well stricken in years, a Moslemah, who, inwardly believing in Allah and his apostle, conformed outwardly with the religion of my people. And my father placed thorough confidence in her, for that he knew her to be trustworthy and virtuous, and he treated her with ever-increasing kindness, believing her to be of his own belief. So when I was well nigh grown up, my father committed me to her charge, saying, Take him and educate him, and teach him the rules of our faith. Let him have the best instructions, and cease not thy fostering care of him. So she took me and taught me the tenets of al-Islam with the divine ordinances of the wusu ablution, and the 5 daily prayers, and she made me learn the Quran by rote, often repeating, Serve none save Allah Almighty. When I had mastered this much of knowledge, she said to me, O my son, keep this matter concealed from thy sire, and reveal not to him, lest he slay thee. So I hid it from him, and I abode on this wise for a term of days, when the old woman died, and the people of the city redoubled in their impiety and arrogance, and the error of their ways. One day, while they were as wont, behold, they heard a loud and terrible sound, and a crier crying out with a voice like roaring thunder, so every ear could hear, far and near, O folk of the city, leave ye your fire worshipping and adore Allah, the all-compassionate King. At this, fear and terror fell upon the citizens, and they crowded to my father, he being king of the city, and asked him, What is this awesome voice we have heard? For it hath confounded us with the excess of its terror. And he answered, Let not a voice fright you, nor shake your steadfast sprite, nor turn you back from the faith which is right. Their hearts inclined to his words, and they ceased not to worship the fire, and they persisted in rebellion for a full year from the time they heard the first voice. And on the anniversary came a second cry, and a third at the head of the third year. Each year once, still they persisted in their malpractices, till one day at break of dawn, judgment and the wrath of heaven descended upon them with all suddenness, and by the visitation of Allah all were metamorphosed into black stones, they and their beasts and their cattle. And none was saved save myself, who at the time was engaged in my devotions. From that day to this I am in the case thou seest, constant in prayer and fasting and reading and reciting the Quran. But I am indeed grown weary by reason of my loneliness, having none to bear me company. Then said I to him, for in very sooth he had won my heart, and was the lord of my life and soul, O youth, wilt thou fare with me to Baghdad city, and visit the ulama, and men learned in the law, and doctors of divinity, and get the increase of wisdom and understanding and theology? And know that she who standeth in thy presence will be thy handmaid, albeit she be head of her family, and mistress over men and eunuchs, and servants and slaves. Indeed my life was no life before it fell in with thy youth. I have here a ship laden with merchandise, and in very truth destiny drove me to this city, that I might come to the knowledge of these matters, for it was fated that we should meet. And I ceased not to persuade him, and speak him fair, and use every art till he consented. And Shahrazad perceived the dawn of day, and ceased to say her permitted say.